So I think handsome and or attractive. Let's say attractive, virile, and fertile, full heads of hair across the board, pretty much. Engaging company, dominant but not in an aggressive way, and kind of to put it in a very 80s sort of an expression, men want to be them, women want to be with them. What do you look for in a
This
podcast
is all very
sponsor?
flattering.
I can't believe you just fucking
This is
talked over my
over.
punchline, you motherfucker. You motherfucker.
I thought you were talking about me. I was just very flattered. This is such a,
No. If anybody was ever wondering if this is scripted or not, there's your proof.
all I get is, Fintan, I've got an idea for the intro. It's a bit different.
We could start again, but the magic's gone. It's dead. It's dead.
The magic's gone now. The magic's gone. It's just classic Fintan of just like bringing it back to me of just like, aren't I so great?
So what do you look for in a sponsor? What qualities do you like? Oh, I missed out. Great in bed.
Lots of fucking zeros.
But when you say zeros, you don't mean as in drop the zero and get with the hero. And by the way, if any listeners can tell me what movie that line is from, you will get a free laptop sticker.
Drop zero. I can't remember that. It's
Fintan, you won't have seen it.
Well, okay, fair enough.
And then just for the record, if anybody is listening, the way it's said is, "Hey, drop the zero and get with the hero." It's so good. Oh, it's fantastic. But anyway, sorry, you were saying.
I can't remember what we were even talking about now. Oh yeah,
we
what do I
were
look
talking
for in a
about the
sponsor?
qualities that we like in a sponsor.
I love sponsors that solve customer needs, help people grow their business, help their customers make more money.
Can you think of any
send us big
businesses like
hampers
that?
at Christmas.
We love those. Especially any that have asked me what my kids might want first.
Quad bikes.
Oh no, see, quad bikes got a double meaning in my house.
Okay.
I appreciate that probably sounds a bit dodgy. At the local chip shop, they do little bits of cod that are suitable for children.
Oh, cod bites.
Cod bites.
I said
so when the kids say, I say, should we get the chippy? And they're like, yeah, what do you want? Cod bites. Do you want a quad bike? Can't you just walk there like a normal child? Etc.
Endless one.
It is for me. I mean, eventually they're going to tire of
branded
these dad
swag. I love a bit of branded swag as well.
Well, interestingly, I've been talking to a sponsor about doing some swag for ice with them and us on.
Ooh.
Because that's one thing we haven't done. We haven't done co-branded swag.
We haven't done co-branded swag yet.
I was thinking those playing cards might be nice.
Yeah. Could do custom Rolexes.
We could, but I would feel a little bit Trump-esque.
There's a famous Rolex. Like Domino's had a Rolex, and I think one of the American Airlines or something had one.
Hang on, Domino's had a Rolex.
Yeah. So if you hit some sort of milestone within the Domino's corporation, they had a Rolex with the Domino's logo on it. It's a famous collector's piece. For some reason, I don't know why you'd want to collect it, but
because of scarcity, not because of desirability.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I think American Airlines had one as well. I'm sure then some of the militaries do it.
The only collectibles like that I've had any experience of when I was working at QVC, right? QVC had done all this branded stuff for staff. And when I was leaving, I was only freelance, but when I was leaving, some of my colleagues did a whip round and a merch round. and they went to try and get all of this branded stuff for me, and I got every single branded QVC item that had been made, except for one. There was one that nobody would give up. I got the frisbee, I got the fucking spatula, I got the ruler, you name it. If it got QVC on it, I had it. Pencils, pens, everything. Except for one thing. Stife made a QVC bear. And it was one to every member of staff at QVC worldwide. And Stife bears are supposedly very collectible anyway. But the QVC one, they would have only made a few thousand of those in QVC colours. And nobody was giving that one up.
So, deck of cards.
Yeah.
Got an idea.
Yeah. Nudie cards.
Do you know it?
We can get with nudie pens. We can get nudie pens done. We can get nudie pens done where we're fully clothed when the pen is one way up, and we turn the pen the other way up, and the clothes come falling off.
No, we do hair, right? So the hair falls off. You could play with that. So
it's like a documentary for me, though.
We could do hair, 2 afros, and then no afro, and that'd be the thing. But if we could get a photographer. Mm-hmm. We could do like a shoot, and we'd have like different pictures for all the cards.
It's an interesting idea.
There's definitely a photographer here who'd be up for it.
It's very doable. Well, Lorna's actually a fantastic photographer.
So we each go get our photo shoots done. And then we've got I think there's something here. I think there's an idea here. We've got time.
I've got a shovel outside, which will obviously double as a spade. And I've got something that I could use as a club. Obviously, diamonds would have to be you. And hearts, I clearly don't have a functioning heart. So, well, maybe.
I don't know if I'm dead inside as well. Yeah, we could make it work. We could,
yeah. It's possible. It's possible.
Did I ever tell you the story about the...
I think doing custom cards 2 sides is going to be expensive. I think 1 side custom card printings.
Yeah. It'd be like the... Yeah, it'd be like the... whatchamacallit? When the American soldiers went to Iraq the second time around, they had like the deck of cards with like all the top generals and stuff on it. So they could familiarize themselves with the faces. Did I ever tell you the custom calendar story?
No.
I worked with a guy. I was doing like an internship thing years ago. And there was this guy, and he was really, really cool guy. He was great to me. I learned like tons from him. But he was having a feud with somebody else in the office, right? Proper like office feud. And what he did was, and this other guy really hated him, like just despised him and everything he stood for. And the guy was a really good dresser, and he'd have like three-piece suit type thing on a Monday, that kind of thing. And so what he did was he went off and he did a photo shoot, and he got a custom calendar printed. Right, with like all the days, and you take off the days and all that kind of stuff. He then went to the local deli where everybody got their lunch, including the guy who hated him. And he convinced the little old dear behind the counter to hang up the calendar facing the deli queue, so that every day when your man's standing there ordering a sandwich, all he can see is this guy. And it was stuff like, lying sideways, posing. It was a full-on like photo shoot. It was absolutely probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
I've been thinking about doing something similar-ish, because I have a situation in my life at the moment where somebody dislikes me quite intensely. And I was thinking about sending them birthday cards with my face on and a big 2 thumbs up. Just for the hell of it, just because it will make me laugh. And obviously inside the card, it can say, go on and get fucked. I can make it a cut it and keep mask.
No, just so what you want to do is because you don't want to be done for harassment, right? So like just wish them happy birthday, but then like get the age massively wrong, and it's just a typo. All right, so if they can complain to the police, there's like literally, the sergeant on the desk just going to go, look, nothing we can do about this.
You're good. Luckily, nobody's listening to this, so nobody's going to know.
If I get a card from John. Hang on a minute. I'm not 50.
I know how this goes. But we were talking earlier, we were talking about sponsors. And can you think of any sponsors that fulfill all of the criteria that we've suggested in here?
Oh, there's so many that jump to the top of my head. There's our latest sponsor.
And they are quite new to us. It's just this is what, our third week with them? Third week.
Probably.
I think it's their third week. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Every Matrix and their Sports Matrix product, which is a off-the-shelf sportsbook solution that lets you get up and running in a couple of clicks and bish bosh, and you've got an amazing sportsbook product with competitive odds and everything you need to run your sport. Like, it's just, they gave the demo but this was great, and they, we set markets and we updated the odds, and we had a whole thing around the odds and how they managed that's actually super clever. And then bonusing and free bets and offers and in play and all that. And it was really, really, really good, really good. So that's one. There'll be a link below in the notes. Give them a shout. Book the demo.
Hang on though.
Next one.
I would like to just add, I didn't see the demo for Every Matrix, but from what I've heard, if they were a sound, it would be. So next sponsor, Finton.
Next sponsor is Optimove. Optimove are the iGaming industry's number one CRM platform.
Number one.
We're number one. It is used by the majority of the Power 50 companies. So basically the biggest companies in the industry, the majority of the biggest companies in the industry, or top 50 companies in the industry, use it, plus lots more. So it's not just for the big guys. It's actually, because it's so smart and flexible. Honestly, if I was doing a startup, I would just instantly plug this in and just have it up and running from day one, and just building up that data and just saves costs, automates stuff. Brilliant. Really, really good. There's also a link below for that. Book the demo. Check it out for yourself.
Do it.
And third sponsor is the wonderful people at Clarion, the bringers of ICE 2025 in Barcelona. I've booked my hotel. Have you booked your hotel, John?
That's a great question, Finton. Of course I haven't.
So I'm booked. I'm ready. I can't wait.
I'm hoping I can go with the sponsor.
I'm sure we can sort something out. So we're ICE 2025, first ICE event in Barcelona. Barcelona's a beautiful city. It's January. The weather will be nice. Food will be great. What's not like my favorite steak restaurant in the world is in Barcelona. So I'm quite happy about that.
Prove it.
Oh, I will. Trust me. Lunch and dinner. 3 days in a row. Watch me. Mr. Costello, you're back. So yeah, I'm quite excited about that. And yeah, that's our three wonderful sponsors.
Yes, virile, fertile, fully hair-headed sponsors. So on this episode of the podcast, though, it's worth pointing out that we are talking to Mr. Duncan Garvie, which I was excited before this one, and he didn't disappoint because I've been connected with Duncan for quite a while on LinkedIn. and seeing what he's up to. He's an interesting and very articulate chap. But the conversation, it was because he'd done a lot of work that you were familiar with previously that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah.
So that was educational for me.
So for those that don't know, Duncan was the founder of the POG, which is a famous affiliate website. Very technical, very just a great community. Famous for its disputes resolutions. So if you got a problem with casino, the POG were famous for kind of getting it solved. And then Duncan talks about what he did before that. So he's got a whole card counting ring, bringing down the house story, which is fascinating. Dispute resolutions, becoming an ADR, I think it's called. Was it ADR? Authorized alternative dispute resolution for Malta and the UK. So, really super legit. The wonderful work he's doing with Bet Blocker and kind of like the thought process he's put into that in terms of like not charging for it, and just some really, really smart stuff there, which is phenomenal.
Well, he's walking the walk and talking the talk, isn't he? He's not just saying, we've got to do RG, we've got to do this. He's saying, here you go.
It's real. He's not doing it for the backlinks, right? It's a legit, real thing, which is, fairly unique among affiliates. Typically, they're quite mercenary. So it's lovely to see one give back. I'm only doing the podcast for the backlinks, mate.
That is very fair.
I'm only here to teach Google I'm real. So he's doing really, really great work. And I think all operators should be promoting Bet Blocker as a tool for their customers. It's just
agreed.
The right
totally
answer.
Agreed.
So yeah, he's super smart and he loves his music and stuff as well. So
yes, it's true.
We talk about it a
lot. Meet Duncan Garvie. Welcome to our guest this week, because we've only really been doing one episode a week, haven't we, Fenton?
We have, John.
So it's been radical. But we are joined by Duncan Garvie. Now, Duncan, what I didn't do was ask you how you wanted to be introduced. So I'm going to ask you now. How would you like to be introduced today?
Well, I mean, I wear a lot of hats. I'm a little bit schizophrenic within the sector.
Wearing one
now? I'm always wearing. Well, I'm always wearing this hat. People ask me why the hat all the time. It's actually about 5 different hats. It's just I have 5 of the same hat.
I like that. I do the same with t-shirts.
Yeah, I am the founder and one of the trustees for the responsible gambling charity Bet Blocker, that distributes blocking software free to anybody who needs it. I'm the head of ADR services for CasinoReviews.com. ADR being alternative dispute resolution, so we manage complaints on behalf of both the UK Gambling Commission and the Malta Gambling Authority. And I previously founded thepog.com, which was sold and has been rebranded as Casino Reviews. So, yeah, a lot of different roles.
I'm glad I asked. Before I hit record, I was going to share my controversial views on the band Queen. And I'm going to share them now. I do have some controversial music views, and they're evolving as I get older as well. The Beatles don't do anything for me apart from a couple of songs. Same for the Rolling Stones. Same these days for the Beach Boys. I used to really like the Beach Boys. Same for Aerosmith, who I used to like. And really? The same for Queen.
Like Aerosmith?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see Aerosmith on the Pump tour when they played at the Monsters of Rock at Donington, which would have been about 91. And they had Jimmy Page come on stage as their special guest. That was pretty fucking sweet.
But
yeah, it's just, I don't know. And Queen these days, I grew up listening to Queen these days, they really bore the shit out of me. Can I say?
I think...
Is that controversial?
Yeah, my position on Queen, I mean, they were always rock solid, greatest hits material. But I never felt inclined to take a deeper dive into the LPs.
You've missed nothing. But I will say this, right? In terms of musicianship, what a fucking bass player. Hot diggity, that lad could play. John Deacon, you never hear about him, and he had fuzzy hair and everything. Brian May wasn't the only one with crazy hair.
No, but you know, the guitarist and the front man, they're always who everybody's looking at. And I'm going to ask now, was the fuzzy hair a dig at Fenton?
No, he's far more direct. He wants to take the piss out of my hair.
Yeah, I would have said something like, he's another twat with fuzzy hair. Like our beloved Fenton Costello.
No, I mean, all of these bands, I used to do music journalism when I was back in university and the Stone Ages.
It was about 15 years ago, wasn't it?
15? No, try 20 to 25 years ago. I'm a mathematician and I can't count it up right now. So, sorry, late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember doing press for Iron Maiden. And look, I've never been a Maiden fan. Doesn't do much for me. But those guys, when you're in the photo pit right at the front, those guys know how to pose for a photo. I mean,
counts for a lot.
I walked away. Yeah, I walked away from that gig going, I actually have hundreds of photos here that I could use, and it's going to be really, really difficult to narrow it down to just a few to go with the review. And it's the same for all these big bands. You learn how to play an arena. You learn how to work a crowd.
I used to edit a DVD publication back in, 20 years ago, whatever year that was. And it turned out, and we didn't know this, but it turned out that Iron Maiden were subscribers. And we reviewed one of their DVDs. And the reviewer was actually the designer of the magazine. He was a huge Maiden fan. He pointed out that the audio on the DVD was a bit sus and didn't know what. I think it had been recorded in 2.0 and not surround. And like Maiden in surround with a dedicated bass speaker would probably be pretty decent. And said, why on earth would they miss a trick like that? Fair enough. Fair question for a reviewer to ask. And they phoned up. They saw the magazine. Saw the review and phoned up to talk to him, not to bollock him or anything like that, which does happen, I'm sad to say. But they phoned up to just explain why it had come about and why it was done that way. And I thought at the time, it's a little bit like, you know what you're saying about Iron Maiden know how to pose for photos? Well, when designers are designing, they're looking for whatever has the best photo with it. That gets the most space. They don't want to have to think about the content. They're looking at the assets they've got, right? Maiden doing that actually genuinely does result in better and more coverage. It's like Tom Cruise at a premiere. Like the amount of column space and social media that he gets off doing photos and phone calls with the fans as he walks down is absolutely colossal. Dwarfs any PR budget the movie's got. And he does it every fucking premiere. It's like if you put that little bit of time in and that little bit of skill, you'll get so much more out of it. Sorry.
Do you not think though that was prophetic? That back then Maiden learned to pose for photos and realised they would get so much more coverage in the magazines, and we've seen the same thing happening. The same evolution happening on the internet, where more and more we started to evolve the content on pages to that quick grab. It's not really about what's being written. It's about how you're laying it out, how you're engaging with your users. It's, to my mind, it seems like that it's sort of a facet of the same evolutionary chain.
But isn't this like, looking good in photos? Isn't that like core to a metal, like a rock and roll or a metal type band?
How the fuck would you know about looking good in photos, Finton?
Good question. I took some today and it looked fucking horrific. I was doing, the before and after. I'm working with a fitness coach. Those like before and after photos. No, a fitness coach. Those before and after photos. Today was very much the before, and it was like, oh my god, it was horrific. But because the whole point of like a band like that is, men want to be them and women want to sleep with them, right? That's what you're aiming for in terms of, and obviously there's the music and stuff. So, but you got to project. You got to project a lifestyle.
Their peak in the 80s for that.
Possibly the 70s.
Yeah.
So it's all about looking good. I don't know. Anyway, so Duncan, let's start with. I love entrepreneurs. I love people who go out and build stuff, and I love people who go out and do stuff. That's always for me super exciting, and it's difficult. And people who've done it, I have huge respect for. So, what was if we kind of go back to your hero's journey, like what was your entry into the gambling industry, and how did that come about?
Oh, okay. So we are going back to what, 2005, 2006. My journey with the gambling industry began when I read a book called Bringing Down the House.
Good book.
By Ben Mesrick. I mean, It's entertaining. It's very entertaining, but it's coming from a background in mathematics. I have a degree in pure mathematics. I used to teach maths. I read that and went, I could do that. I can do that. That's easy. I learned to count cards. I made friends with a lot of other people who knew how to count cards and deploy various other advantage play strategies, including some of the people who Bringing Down the House was based on. I then started going to America and with my wife, who also knew how to count cards, and we started playing over there with some teams. I then looked at the online market, and we thought that, well, I thought we'd made a bit of money from the advantage play, and I quite fancied not teaching anymore. So just to disabuse any notions on this one first, it wasn't the kids. I really enjoyed teaching kids. That was a part of the job I found very gratifying, but the bureaucracy, bureaucracy around it, all the box ticking, the things that you have to do to please the politicians rather than because it's in the best interests of the students, I found deeply frustrating. So I quite wanted a break from teaching, so I took some time off from teaching and set up the POG. That was about 2011.
All right, so we're going to pause there for a second. We'll get to the POG in a second. Let's go, because it's like, oh yeah, I was part of a blackjack card counting team in Vegas, and right, there feels like there's a movie in here somewhere. So obviously there's the Bringing Down the House, and it's like MIT students running around, dressing up, like there's the big splasher guy, and then the other guy sneaks in, and they're all hand signals. And how much of that was like representative of your experience, or was it a lot more mechanical and boring in real life?
Oh,
where's the balance?
Definitely mechanical and boring. It is a grind. It is, playing on a team is a grind. Yes, there's certainly a novelty to the covertly working with other people and the signals and pulling people onto the table at the right time and passing the count without other people knowing what you're doing. But hour after hour, and it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have been playing all night, and the numbers are just grinding your head. And then you're all sneaking up and sleeping in the same hotel room on the floor, all over the place to keep the expenses down. The bringing down the house represents this as big money. It's my experience of it. I'm not saying it hasn't been for anyone, but my experience of it is it's not big money. It is big money for the people right at the top. It's the people who are either funding the team or the people who are playing the big player. For the spotters, it's more about positioning yourself for an opportunity to step up,
to get promoted or to be drafted, kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Was it just blackjack or was it roulette as well?
No, I was just blackjack. Though I did dabble in some other advantage play techniques on other games. Roulette was never one of them. Wheel clocking on roulette is notoriously difficult. There have been a few decent books written on that subject, but yeah, it's the same with dice setting at the craps table. Though roulette is more predictable. I mean, if you can get a valid data sample on a roulette wheel, you can determine if it's biased to certain sectors. But dice setting, I've never seen sufficient evidence to convince me that anybody could. The theory works, but whether anybody could practically apply it, I've never seen enough evidence to convince me of that.
Interesting, because I read the book. So I read Bringing Down the House, but then there was I can't remember his name, but the book's called A Man for All Markets. So he was the guy he was the university lecturer who invented blackjack theory and then did card counting, and then he developed Thorpe. That's it.
Edward O. Thorpe. Yeah,
that's it. And what I loved about it, so he built the first little computer to do the laser scanning of the wheel. But what was amazing about that guy is he then went off and set up his hedge fund and had this ridiculously successful hedge fund business where he spotted that Bernie Madoff was a scam.
Yeah.
Madoff came to him for funding and they're like, well, we've done the maths, and for you to make these returns, we would see it here, here, and here in the stock market, and we don't. But apparently...
Thorpe was a legitimate genius, wasted developing card counting.
But he was doing it as a hobby. But interestingly, his returns for the time period he had a hedge fund, because he retired fairly early, his returns consistently beat Buffett.
Yeah.
The only reason Buffett ended up with more money is just Buffett never retired, and just the money just kept compounding.
Yeah.
So an amazing man. That's fascinating. So, okay, so I've read these books as well, and I went, I'm pretty sure I could do that. Bringing Down the House, Liar's Poker, I think I could be a trader. Turns out I'm not smart enough to do any of those things. So that's why I got into marketing.
Card counting doesn't mean you don't need to be smart. You just need to have a personality defect that allows you to be okay with boredom. Because it requires repetition to the nth degree. As long as you're happy to sit there and repeat and repeat and repeat, you can count cards. You don't need the idea that you need to be a high level knowledge of mathematics is nonsense. Where the MIT team, why it started in somewhere like MIT, an academic institution like that, was that these people were breaking new ground. They were developing the systems. The systems themselves aren't complicated. Developing the system is complicated.
Got it. Okay, so all right, so you had some fun in Vegas. Was it just Vegas, or were you traveling all over? Or
no, it was more the East Coast. And I actually, this is embarrassing to say, given the stories, I never made it out to Vegas.
You never made it to Vegas?
No, never been to Vegas. Would love to go sometime, but I've never managed to get that far out.
I avoided. I've been once. I avoided it for years. I get it. All right, so you see the online opportunity. Like, okay, hang on, everything's moving online. Let's set up the POG. Talk a little bit about the POG and kind of, because like we were talking beforehand, I've been a huge fan of the POG for a very long time. It's been a benchmark website for me. How did that come about? And talk a little bit about what you did with the POG.
The POG was really, yes, there was a market there, and that was quite evident. I wanted to be more involved in gambling. I wanted to stop traveling quite so much. And I had some time off because, as I said, we'd managed to bank some money via the card counting that allowed me to take a little bit of a break from teaching and reassess my life. So while I was doing that, I basically spent some time building an affiliate website. I was coming from a player background, though, and I'll be quite open and say a more militant background than the attitudes I would hold these days. There's a very, very confrontational us versus them mindset within a lot of the offline advantage play community. And that's understandable, especially when you go back a little bit in time when people were getting backroomed and assaulted. Yeah. I mean, there have been a few notable court cases that have kind of put paid to that kind of behaviour. But it's easy to see why that sort of mindset developed.
So it becomes like a poacher gamekeeper type environment. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And when I decided to set up an affiliate website, I also have quite a rigid. I would guess my personality falls on certain non-neurotypical spectrums. And I have quite a rigid moral code, I think, in how I view the world. And for me, if I was going to promote gambling, the only way I would be able to be comfortable with that was if I felt I was doing something that actually delivered value that helped players. Help players stay safe, help players fix problems, and they were the kind of core tenets for the POG. Was firstly, I wanted honest reviews that actually directed players towards operators that were safe to play with, and this was before. This was before the real rise in regulation that happened during the teens. It was all international licenses, and some were okay and others weren't, and it really quite often came down to how the business wanted to be perceived rather than regulatory standards. So we wanted to try and channel players to operators that would treat them with a degree of respect. And I then looked at managing complaints, which, I mean, and I get it, a lot of people question my sanity going into that.
It's not an easy one.
No, it's not, but it's also over the time that the POG, and even slightly before the POG, I mean, you had Casino Meister and Ask Gamblers before the POG. These sites had demonstrated even back then that there was quite significant commercial advantages to delivering that kind of value to players. Yep. And I still think there is. I still think that there's a lot of room for improvement in that area. So that's really where the POG sort of what it was founded to do.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing a lot of investigative work, either triggered by complaints where somebody came to us with something that was actually worth investigating. I remember we identified an operator, if I recall, it was Skybook, who were blatantly cheating. Effectively, one of their video poker games was, we managed to get a sufficiently large sample of play from somebody who had played optimal strategy to determine that their video poker games were effectively set to not return any hand that was better than two pair.
Wow.
Now, I can't say for sure whether it was for all players at all times, or whether that was triggered by a player getting ahead by a certain amount, or whether that was triggered by a financial threshold for the operator. Any of these are possible, but it was certain. It was effectively guaranteed that the sample we'd seen could not have happened from a fairly functioning video poker game.
Wow.
So we saw that. You saw other things like data slips where operators were trying to hide the connections between their various entities.
Sure.
And
sure.
they like
or suppliers.
Yep. And I remember one where I did a review of their affiliate program. And buried into the code on their click here to email us was an email address for a totally different affiliate program, which tied back to a blacklisted group, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, the player complaint side of things and the reviews just kind of naturally led into this space of doing a bit more sort of investigative journalism work, which was really interesting. It was good
for
fun.
Sure. Yeah, I could imagine, because I think it's probably evolved a bit now, but there was definitely, a Wild West type mentality among the operators, and it was still relatively. But then on the flip side, there was, the amount of affiliates I know who started off in bonus abuse and had made that a business. And then I might as well do online affiliates, and kind of just evolved into that, or online poker, or these kind of things. So there was also a Wild West in the other way, where there was no wagering requirements, there was no rollovers, there was no minimum bet size or minimum odd size. Like, just it was the golden age of making money.
Well, it was back when casinos were still working this out. They threw up these offers without ever considering the mathematical implications of what they were doing. And smart players figured out that these were just money machines. They were ATMs. And, no wagering requirements. I remember, 10 times wagering requirements on any games and things like that. It was insanity. That was always going to die a death, and it's unfortunate. If I'm quite honest, when it comes to bonuses, I think that the industry has backed itself into a corner.
Agreed.
Where they've all got their guns out, and nobody's willing to put their gun down first, because the reality is, if they want to offer promotional incentives, they should be post-play promotional incentives. That would be far more controllable. You could judge how much of a reward to give to players based on the value of the player. But the upfront bonuses are too attractive to players, and everybody is used to them now. And no operator is willing to say, well, we'll stop giving the bonuses.
You say that everybody's used to them, right? But it's a very common criticism that the actual mechanics of bonusing, it's fucking impenetrable. It's like, oh yeah, so you can have 500 quid or whatever in free bets if you put in this amount of money, but only if you're going to gamble on the fourth Thursday of the month, and then returns will be on the fifth Thursday of the month. So you've only got to gamble in a Monday where there are 5 Thursdays. Do you know what I mean? It's like this really arcane kind of complicated shit. And I do think that the site that just completely, I mean, what you're saying, like the post bet thing, the post play makes a lot of sense just for clarity for a player. But actually, I just think any site that just says, if you do this, you get this, it's that simple, is onto a winner.
I think I would love to see it. I would love to see it because from a player complaint management perspective, bonuses just cause problems.
We'll be long dead before anybody does that.
No, exactly. Whether it is players who don't read the terms and conditions and make mistakes,
99.9% of them, right?
Or
nobody
players who are multi-accounting. If you removed the bonus, the upfront bonus, the incentive to engage in multi-accounting evaporates. It just disappears. That would be a big gain for the industry.
I think you'd expect the crypto guys to be more in that area because it's so easy to fire up a new wallet and deposit again, and particularly the brands that aren't doing KYC and stuff, right?
Well, the problem with that, in my experience, again, this is 100% my opinion. It does not reflect the opinion of BetBlocker or Casino Reviews. This is my opinion. The crypto markets are so unregulated that most smart players will avoid them because you just won't get paid. It's an unfortunate truth. When the operator is the final say on any complaint and they are financially incentivized not to pay, they will work far harder to find reasons not to pay.
I get your point, but I think it's a bit like the old days. It really depends. There's definitely brands there where it's fine. It's as good as a bank. And then there's others where, I'm sure it's like, find a reason or ask them to submit documentation and we'll just slow this down and hope they forget about it.
I would agree with you. I would definitely agree with you on that. There are good, when I'm painting with a very broad brush, when I say all crypto operators are that. However, my experience over the last 14 years managing complaints is that a good unregulated operator is only a good unregulated operator until the case comes along that actually impacts them.
It's all fun and games till the player wins, I suppose.
That's exactly it. Once you have a player who has won 300,000 or 400,000, the good aspect of their practice quite often disappears.
I could name one or two brands where they wouldn't even blink, but I do get your point. The bonusing one, though, is an interesting one overall because the way because obviously, we had a bonus or had a part of a team with a bonus website. Like that was our whole kind of reason to live. But the way we approached it was the bonus is the bonus. And because we were casino focused rather than say sportsbook, casino players are there to play. They're not necessarily there to win, right? So this is more like I've got an hour, I've got 2 hours, I've got 20 quid. I want to maximize my fun. And that the bonus was a way to extend that lifetime or to extend that gameplay for their afternoon or their session or whatever it is they're going to do. And it was more, for us, it was more about showing them, okay, this bonus, when you break it down, gets you this many spins, for example, and kind of just really kind of helping them kind of understand, okay, well, I'll have more fun. I'll have more time or more gameplay over here versus over here. And it was less about, obviously we had all the details and everything but it was more about giving them the gameplay rather than, get the free money and go make this and you're going to be blah, blah, blah. So it was a completely different mindset. And we felt it more reflected, like in the kind of the research and the kind of people we were talking to, like all the kind of user panels and stuff we did. It really felt more casino orientated or kind of user orientated in terms of how to present a bonus or what people were looking for in a bonus.
Absolutely. And I tried to do something similar with the POG. I've one of my real gripes with the affiliate sector is that every bonus is the best in the world. Oh, this is the best bonus. This is the best. And it's all just about who's paying the affiliate the most money to say their bonus is best. Actually challenge any of these content creators, and most of them couldn't even tell you the terms associated with the bonus. They couldn't have. They can't legitimately compare one bonus to another. But this one's the best. I tried to create a system where we compared bonuses using some tools that allowed me to evaluate them mathematically. So we could take the wagering requirement. We could take the types of bonus. So was it upfront? Was it post wagering? Was it sticky? So did they remove it at the end of the wagering? Was there a win cap on it? What was the max bet? What game were you playing? What was your bet size? We could, and basically filtered it down to a standard set that roughly approximated the users. So we used a 50-cent spin value for our mid-range player. And all this, what this did is it pumped out a number at the end, what the value was, the expected value for the player at the end of the bonus. My problem with it is I never found a way. While I personally felt that this is far, far better at comparing bonuses, and this would be really useful if I could convey this to users, I never found a way to explain that system in a way that the average casino player would engage with.
That's interesting, because we did something very similar on the back end, and then it was just this many spins. So we just converted everything to spins.
Right.
So I think we used 20 cents, but it's like 300 spins.
Yeah.
And so
makes sense because you've got a standardized currency then.
Because that's the problem, because you've got $10 no deposit free versus $100 deposit bonus. How do you compare them side by side with all the maths behind it? And it's like, well, actually, this will get you this many spins. This will get you this many spins. And it's probably wrong. You're the mathematician. We're probably, I don't know how.
No, I think it was. You could definitely figure out on average how long the funds were going to last in terms of number of spins. And I think that's a really interesting way to approach it.
Affiliate managers hated it.
Yeah, affiliate managers hated a lot about what the POG did, so you're in good company there.
You're saying you're giving away 300 spins, it's confused customer support, and they're getting upset.
I actually, sort of a tangent here, but one of the biggest one of the things that the industry has done best for itself was getting players to accept free spins rather than bonuses. They are just worth nothing. They are literally worth nothing. Yet players get excited by the idea of 10 free spins today.
Yeah, it's but it's also about it's kind of where we backed into in terms of just that's what they're looking for. They just want to play, and they just want more gameplay. So let's give them more gameplay. On the dispute, so obviously the dispute resolution, I think this is a fascinating area because it's also it's also a bit of an arms race, right? So operators say get exposed with wagering requirements, or so they increase the T's and C's, makes it more confusing for the customers who look for smarter ways to get around things or get. So there's always this, like, there's ordinary customers, and then there's the advantage players, for want of a better word. And so there's the constant arms race between the two. And it kind of feels like when you look at the market right now, there's kind of 2 or 3 kind of key trends in the market. So one is, if we look at a Germany type country, or even actually there's a court case recently in the Netherlands where players are getting refunded for historical losses because the brand wasn't licensed at the time of play, which I think, and like from what we've heard in Germany, there's like literally like class action lawsuit style billboards, did you play online gambling, blah, 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 come call this number. So there's that kind of area, which I think is quite interesting from a, like, oh shit, it's going, like, it's the ultimate level of just free roll, if you've lost, get your money back. And then the other one that I've heard, which I thought was quite interesting, was players who've self-excluded, who then find a way to get back into the operator to play. And then if they're down, they then pull the self-excluded ripcord of, you shouldn't have let me play, refund me my money. So again, they're trying to free roll as a way to, basically it's, this is how you get a free roll if you don't get caught. Are these like, particularly the second, like the German court case one's an interesting one. And I could see it becoming more and more common. But that kind of like using self-exclusion as a way to bypass, to free roll and stuff like that, is it just like it's a tiny fraction, or is it widespread, or where do you feel it's at?
Well, I'll comment briefly on both. I mean, the court cases, that's what I think it was, is it Bill 55 in Malta? Yeah. They've recently tried to stop that. This is over the next 10 to 20 years, there's going to be a shift to national licenses, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
And these international licenses are going to find it harder and harder to compete. That's just the reality of the way the market is moving. But the truth is that national licenses are not a silver bullet. Part of the problem that you're seeing in Germany and the Netherlands is being caused by the fact that it's so easy to access the black market. There are court cases against various operators, and they're the exceptions rather than the rules. What's happening there is some consumer group has identified an operator they can actually reach legally.
Yes.
Because the truth of the matter is that taking a Curacao licensed operator or an unlicensed operator to court in Germany, great, you'll win your ruling, doesn't make it in any way enforceable.
Yeah.
How are you going to do it? We act as an ADR for the Malta Gaming Authority, and there is a degree of that because there are Maltese licensed operators that are accepting play from, or have been at least, from Holland and from Germany. And from an official perspective, we have to take the position that we're here to enforce the Malta licensing standards. If you're looking to enforce the Dutch or the German licensing standards, you need to contact the appropriate organisation in Germany or Holland. This isn't a comment on our actual opinion on what is happening here.
But you've got to enforce the rules within the framework that you're operating.
We're empowered to enforce the Malta license. We're not empowered to act. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out, because until somebody finds a legitimate way of addressing the black market, of actually building some genuine friction to accessing the black market. All of these national licensing regimes are always going to struggle to enforce not just their licensing, not just their license system as a whole, but, for instance, their responsible gambling protections, because it's wonderful to go really aggressive with responsible gambling protections and make operators responsible for identifying players in all of these at-risk categories. But if the black market's so easily accessed, all that happens is we take vulnerable players out of a space where we could monitor them and push them into this unmonitored, unregulated space.
Agreed.
Where they are exploited at a far higher level and far more aggressively.
So just on that then, so you talk about or you mentioned so obviously there's the offshore unlicensed guys. Typically, crypto is probably their payment method of choice. Is it actually possible to introduce proper friction or blocks to stop people going to those websites in a realistic way?
Well, 20 years ago, I would have said that the market that we currently have is impossible. Technology has changed since then in a radical fashion. Right now, if we pause everything right now, is it possible? No, it's not possible. It's that simple. It is not possible. But that doesn't mean that things are going to be the same in 3 or 5 or 10 years' time. We're constantly changing the way the internet works at its very core. Cryptocurrencies is something of a relatively new invention in the grander scheme of things.
Yeah.
We're already seeing countries starting to discuss regulating that. How does that affect things? Do we just then get another? Do we regulate all the crypto we have, and then new ones pop up that are now black market crypto?
For sure,
it's always going to be this arms race where we're one side is chasing the other.
Do you think that maybe I don't actually know as much about this as you two, and I don't like admitting that I don't know as much as somebody else, especially people with hair. But I keep looking at
a second. I do actually have hair.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was counting. I was counting you in that number. I've not heard this conversation be had before, right? But in terms of black market operations, grey market operators, you look at what they're offering, right? And it's all on legitimate, mature software and technology provided by places that provide lots of things elsewhere. No, just bear with me here. There's a lot of stuff out there that is provided as I've said, right? And to stop a proportion of things, you can surely look at their suppliers. Because if their suppliers are supplying legitimate licensed casinos in your country, then you have leverage. Or if they're licensed to supply in your country, you have leverage. If they are doing any kind of payment processing, any kind of banking services, then there's leverage because pressure can be applied elsewhere. And you can say to them, you can either behave or you can fuck off. And then that labels the crypto operators as immediately dodgy to players without labeling them as dodgy. Do you see what I mean? It's like, well, if it's crypto, it's probably dodgy. I won't gamble with those fucks.
There's ways around it.
There's two comments.
People are lazy,
one
though.
One is that the regulators are starting to wake up to that. And I think it will be nobody should be surprised in 5 years' time when, to hold a valid software license in certain markets, the software provider is required not to distribute their games to unlicensed providers. I think that is coming. But there is a huge secondary comment to make here. Actually, just before coming on today, I'm working with the team at Casino Reviews because we've just published an article on fake games.
Yeah.
I will be doing more to raise the profile of that article over the coming days. But effectively, we've managed to identify 2 fake game providers. These are groups that are taking well-known slots games, ripping off all of the IP and draping it over their own engine. They are doing various other unscrupulous things because the games might look identical, but they are not returning to players at the same level. In fact, one of the adverts we found was talking about how players will lose faster and not know the difference.
Wow.
I'd love to share that article just for the record. When it's written, I'd love to share that link.
Please.
It's already published. I can send you over the URL later today. We were having some technical issues getting it to display correctly in the UK, but that's sorted now.
So, John, just on the software stuff as well. So, look, I agree. I think going after the suppliers and the payment providers is the quickest. Like, that's far more effective than IP blocking at a national level. However, there's a well-worn path. I'm going to preface this with allegedly in the industry on how to deal with this. So if you look at offshore, particularly offshore casino, there are suppliers who just sell software. So they sell you an entire casino out of a box with all the games and everything you possibly need to run a casino. But they're just selling software. And you buy the software from them, you install them on your servers, and you run your casino, and you're running your version of this software to do whatever you want. So straight away you can have a casino out of a box. Now it doesn't have the big brand name games and these kind of things, but it'll be close enough for a typical customer. Then the other way to do it, or the other way that happens, and there's some big notable examples of this, is they spin up so the supplier spins up a second entity. So there's this company over here that deals with all these regulated markets. This company over here deals with Asia, just to narrow it down a bit. And it's all filmed from the same studio. It's just 2 different feeds and 2 different color schemes, or it's basically the same software, just slightly different UX or slightly different. So they can effectively 90% of it's the same with some cosmetic changes, and it's all run through different business. So it's actually relatively easy to bypass for a company that's determined to do it.
What I would say on that front, and I think this needs to happen, and I am gently trying to push various software providers towards this. What we need on games is a license verification seal.
Yep, agreed.
Something that the player can click and takes it through to the Playtech or the NetEnt or Novomatic or whoever it is website where it says this URL is authorized to deliver this game.
I agreed.
Because fake game providers will not be able to get round that. But because of the third-party distribution that goes on, where a software provider sells their games to a third party who then distributes it to loads of sub-licensees, the software provider right now isn't always aware of all of the URLs that
they don't want to be.
Yeah. And this is where we're currently experiencing some friction, because obviously the software providers don't really want to have to do the extra legwork to know who all their vendors are. That's probably. I don't think it's the legwork they're worried about. It's they need the plausible deniability. Deniability. That's possibly true.
Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we've shut that down now. Really sorry.
This all ties in the fake game stuff. I've got a particular bee in my bonnet about this, because it ties together all of the sort of areas that I'm interested in, the player protection, the harm minimization. Because the truth of the matter is that the biggest sector for the black market in the UK is casinos not on GamStop.
Yep.
These affiliates marketing these operators who are specifically targeting the UK self-exclusion program and informing users how to bypass this. Well, effectively, and this isn't exclusively, but effectively, the vast majority of the casinos that are advertised on these sites are black market operators, and I can identify very quickly they're offering fake versions of popular games.
Interesting.
And what this doubles the risk for a player, because it's not just the lack of gambling harm protections. It's not just that the operator won't introduce a proper self-exclusion. It's not just that they're not monitoring your play for harmful patterns. You then have consumers en masse getting defrauded by games. And I mean, I've heard rumours. I've never been able to prove anything. I've heard rumours of operators that offer legitimate games to most players, that sub in fake ones for certain high value clients, things like this. You could because these games are entirely untested, you can do lots of really duplicitous, sneaky things with them. You could set them to have a win cap, so if a player gets ahead a certain amount, they then just won't win until they've dropped beneath that win cap. You could do things like set up for streamers. Another one of my bugbears. You set up for streamers a game that pays out way over 100%, and then have your actual players playing a game that pays out at 70% or 60%.
Yeah.
I think it's worth taking one little second to point something out. So somebody that I know from the B2B media side of the gambling industry emailed me a few weeks ago to point out that actually there's a B2B media publisher in the industry who is advertising not on GamStop sites. Your facial expressions say it all. I mean, it's like... So
probably what's happened there is they've sold an SEO article and not paid attention to what the SEO article is.
No, I think some of it's display like banner type ads as well.
Oh, get screenshots.
Yeah,
it's just fucking insane. But it's not just irresponsible. It's also going against everything that the industry says it's about. And it's
horrible.
Fucking madness.
SEOs. Look, back when I was running the POG, the last few years of the POG, we worked with a number of SEO agencies. And every single time we brought a new SEO in, the first thing they wanted to do was set up a casinos not on GamStop page.
Jesus Christ.
Because for an SEO, their objective, what they're paid to do, is drive traffic for you, and that's the easiest way to get traffic. And they fundamentally, from an SEO, they don't consider regulation, they don't consider ethics, none of that matters. It's just driving traffic. That's what I'm paid to do. We actually did on the POG. We did ultimately set up a casinos not on GamStop page, and made it a huge article directing people to BetBlocker. We suppressed suppressed all marketing. The idea there was to try and again, this was a bit naive, even 5-6 years ago, but to try and outcompete these other sites that were ranking for this and direct users to somewhere they could get support rather than to these black market operators.
I think that's a lovely segue. Tell us about Bet. So, how did Bet Blocker come about? Tell us what you're doing with the charity and all the great stuff you're doing there.
Okay. Bet Blocker came about from the POG. It was around about 2017. So it was a few years after the UKGC license really came into place. And we were seeing quite a sharp increase in the number of responsible gambling related claims that were coming over my desk. I wanted, talk to any experienced responsible gambling professional in this field, and you'll hear some horror stories about the cases that they've had to manage. Some of these situations were properly tragic, properly unpleasant, and I wanted to find a way that we could help the people contacting us, even if we couldn't help them get money back. So I started to look around for other agencies that we could signpost, and the first thing that came to my head was blocking software. Let's get a physical barrier in there, and they can then that buys them some time to seek the help and the support that they actually need. I was maybe a bit naive at the time. I like to think everybody in the world has the best of intentions, and we're all working for the common good. It's rarely the truth, but that's just the way I like to see things. I looked around at the blocking softwares that were available on the market, and I was a little stunned to realise that they were all subscription-based. I'm talking to people
interesting.
who are panicking. They're at crisis point. They're already extremely anxious about how am I going to explain where all this money is to my partner. Quite often they're worried, how am I going to pay next month's rent, or how am I going to put food on the table? Where's my kid's school uniform going to come from? To tell them that you need to go and pay to get help, it does two things. It exacerbates the primary marker of harm, financial distress. It makes that worse. And it ensures that the people who are most vulnerable, the people who most desperately need the support, are the least able to access it.
Because it's also like, even okay. So if you take like the complete rock bottom, like, oh my God, how are we going to eat tomorrow? People, it's huge. But even the okay, I haven't blown all my money, but that was too much, and it's, I'm in a bad place. But there could be things like, I just don't want this to show up on the credit card, or on the bank statement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? There's so many secondary things of actually requiring a payment that creates barriers for the user. I hadn't thought of it like that. I love it.
Yeah, quite often when somebody commits to blocking software, you have a very, very small window to get them through to blocked, because they are balancing on an edge, and where you're asking for a payment, that slows that process down. And what's quite likely to happen is that instead of paying for blocking software, they decide to take that money and go and try and gamble it to win back what they've lost.
Jesus.
Now that's a really problematic thought process for anybody to get into, but they are already at crisis point. So yeah, I looked around, and it was all subscription based, and I was not comfortable telling these people to go and pay to get help. And so I had a night where I had a few beers and I ranted and raved at a good friend of mine, John Wright from Statstrone.
Yeah, I know John. Friend of the podcast.
Yeah. I ranted and raved at him about how this wasn't okay. And he basically challenged me by the end of the conversation, well, go and set up your own and give it away for free. So that's what we did.
You're saying that we should build a statue to John Wright, is what you're saying? I'm already working on that in my back garden. It's not the most flattering one, but it's a statue. Well, I find that the materials you choose for the statue influence whether it's a good or bad tribute. What have you used as your base material? Because if you've used human excrement, I would probably side with John in that lawsuit.
Why did you jump to that? And why was that what was going through my head before you said it? No, we basically treated it as a marketing expense for the POG when we set up. The idea being, and we were talking about this a little before we started the recording. The POG was trying to position itself to be ahead of the market. I had a good idea that ultimately regulation was going to get tighter and tighter, and the affiliate market was going to have to become an active participant in minimizing social harms. I felt that delivering this sort of service free of charge would really help position the POG in a very positive way going forward. I underestimated how much it was going to cost us to deliver this service, so it became quite an expense. But it was also quite popular quite quickly. A couple of years after I started the project in 2017, but 2019, basically it was more than the business could afford to sustain.
Sure.
So we were kind of left in a situation where we had only a few options. We should close it down. But we did that. There were thousands of people using the service every day, and we would be leaving them without the support that they needed.
Of course.
We could start charging for it, but that would be fundamentally undermining the whole reason that we set up the project in the first place. So instead, what we decided to do was break it off from the business, register it as a charity in its own right, and try and seek funding via donations, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, that's the origin story for BetBlocker. What we've been doing, I mean, there's so many advantages to running this as a free service. There's so many benefits for the end user to it being free. Firstly, I mean, because we don't require registration, we don't have this bank of contact information for vulnerable people. It just doesn't exist. You hack into our servers. Look, I've no doubt you could get up to mischief. But the reality is what you're going to find in there is conversations between me and the team about who's covering this conference. Have we bought plane tickets for that? You're not going to find contact information for our users. The truth is that if big banks can get hacked, if Google and Facebook can get hacked, if somebody was really determined, they can get into BetBlocker. And there are plenty of bad actors in this sector, as we've just been discussing, who would happily take a list of contact information for vulnerable people and use it for marketing. By not having it, we just eliminate that risk entirely.
Just point out what a shit conversation this is to have. But it's an awful thing to admit. But yeah, sorry.
I said earlier I like to think that everybody has the best of intentions in the world. Yes, I like to think like that, but I also like to act as if they don't. you have to have a degree of cynicism. There are plenty of people who would misuse that.
I like to not shit my pants, but it just takes a sneeze at the wrong time. We all know. We've all been there.
You want to get that checked, John? That's not normal.
On it.
I think you've reached that age.
Yeah. But if we don't ask for registration details, we also remove the stigma. As you were saying about things turning up on credit card statements, for some users it's beyond even that. They don't want to put their name on a list of people who are gambling addicts.
Yeah, sure.
So we remove that from the process. We streamline the registration process because we're not asking you to fill in your name, your email address, your payment card details. So we can actually go from download, actually typing it into Google, finding our site, downloading, to blocked in under 2 minutes on both Android and iOS. And as I said earlier, you have a short window, so that getting that person over that line quickly is really important. And over and above all of that, when you're talking about blocking software, when you have a renewal period,
it's another window, yeah.
Yeah, your block then has to match that renewal cycle. When we don't have any renewal cycle, we can say, have whatever block you want. Do you want 24 hours? Great, have 24 hours. Do you want 5 years? On you go. It allows us to be far more flexible with users. But that's just talking about our, what I would call our crisis management tool. Blocking software, from my point of view, is traditionally viewed as a crisis management. When somebody loses too much, they're panicking, they need help, they slap in a block, and that's it. But we're also trying to redefine this conversation. We've built a system to approach the issue from the other side, harm minimization rather than crisis management. So instead, what we have is a scheduler where you can say, well, actually, I want to make sure my bills are paid before I play. So I'm going to look up my payday, and I'm going to set the block to come on for a week after payday every month.
Smart.
Or I know that Super Bowl Sunday's just coming up, and I know I'm really bad for gambling too much during the game. I'm going to set my block to come on for the duration of the match. We're not quite there with that yet, but in the next few weeks we will be launching our scheduler feature. At the moment, you can only block by full days. What we'll be releasing before the end of this year is the ability to block by time window. So, for instance, if you wanted to say, I want to make sure I spend time with my kids. So I know they get home from school at 4. I know they go to bed at 9. So Monday to Friday, I'm going to set the block to come on between 4 and 9. Or I know during the week it's bad for me to sit up too late playing, but I keep doing it. So I'm going to set it to kick in at 10 o'clock every Sunday through Thursday night, so I can't sit up all night playing when I've got to work the next day.
This all makes me like I've got a Chrome plugin that does it for social media websites.
Yeah,
exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's just the easiest way to do it. This makes so much sense. It's really clever.
It's really clever. The big challenge for us is going to be the dialogue around the market, because the truth is that consumers view responsible gambling as what you do when you have a problem.
Okay.
They look to responsible gambling tools and responsible gambling information after they feel they have a problem. This is backwards. In fact, it's actually contrary to the very definitions of the words responsible gambling. If you already have a problem, what you should be doing is stop it. Everybody else should be gambling responsibly.
Yep.
It should be the same as getting into your car. What's the first thing you do? Click, clunk.
Not me. Fuck that shit.
On.
Fuck that seatbelt pansy shit.
You're going to die like a man, eh?
Fuck yeah, I'm going to get caught in the gears of a combine.
Yeah, no. John's entirely correct, but he actually proves my point, because he will still, when he's getting into the car, he's thinking, fuck that seatbelt. He is thinking about that when he starts, and that's what we need to get consumers to do. Think about this. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you don't need a deposit limit. Maybe you don't need a scheduled block. That's fine. That's okay. But you need to think about it now, not when it's too late.
But until it's a part of the whole sign-up process, on every site it is 3, 4, 5 clicks or whatever. It's taking you out of whatever it is that you're doing, and it needs to be integrated into the process. And I don't think anybody's doing that at the moment, and I find that really slightly bonkers. The other thing as well is that you have a period of evaluation. When you sign up for a site and you start playing, you have a period of evaluation. It's usually 4 weeks where they look at you, they go, this kind of blue, and their tools are working in the background, all that shit. It's been well and truly proven that a gambler with problematic play, for want of a better expression, for one of those shitty expressions, if they have that disordered type of play, they'll do it from the first bet. You don't need a month. You'll know within a day. You'll know within an hour. So why fuck about? But what do I know?
This is the eternal balancing act between the commercial aspects of the business and the need to minimize harm.
Yeah.
I always have to be a little careful about how I speak around this, because we're looking for the industry to support us. BetBlocker's charitable purpose is to deliver free blocking software to as many people as can possibly use it. As many people as need it. Our charitable purpose isn't to campaign for change. That has to be taken on by somebody else. Trying to do both, and I think a lot of charities make a mistake around this, trying to do both, you're pissing off the very groups that you're looking to for support. So I have to be somewhat pragmatic about how I choose to speak on this.
Well, if we think in terms of pragmatism, then our operators, we could put out operators working, promoting BetBlocker to their customers as a tool that they can use. Would be one area, and the second would be if people listening wanted to donate.
Yes.
Where or how do they go and do that? I think they'd be two.
There's certainly we have a donation feature on our website. We don't push that particularly hard, because the majority of people on our site are people impacted by gambling harm.
Sure.
And if you've been impacted by gambling harm, what I want you to do is take that money, fold it, and put it back in your wallet. We will find other ways to support the service. I don't want people making their financial situation worse.
But the people listening to this are industry folk, so they can donate.
No, absolutely. Though it's interesting, the high levels of gambling harm that are actually evidenced within the sector itself.
That's true.
Very good point. My right hand at BetBlocker is a man called Pedro Romero, who has worked as the head of responsible gambling for some of the biggest operators in the world, 888, William Hill, Bally's, Gig, and he talks about this a lot, the high levels of addiction seen within the industry itself. and again, this all ties back to the black market, which I keep circling back to. I'm not fixated on one thing in my life, I promise. The balance between the need to allow the industry to make money and the need to minimize gambling harms, really, its focal point is the ability of regulators to stymie the black market. Because if you create regulations that are too restrictive while the black market is still available, all you do is channel large sections of the consumer population to the black market.
Completely agree.
I would highlight. Well, look, I'll be completely open, and I think these sort of policies are put in place with the best of intentions. But like the source of wealth checks that are getting pressed on the consumers hate the source of wealth checks, and they just don't comply with them. They just leave a gambling operator when they're challenged with them. And once they've exhausted the regulated market with that, they are just going to go to the black market where there are no checks and they can engage freely. Maximum bet caps. Again, it's one thing to say to restrict the entertainment being offered in that way if we can restrict it across the board. But if the black market can still offer the entertainment the user's actually looking for, and we say to the licensed market, you can no longer offer this, all we're doing is channeling users to the black market.
Yep.
And this is where if we could stop, if we could put just one day, we had a magic wand, we could wave and we could stop the black market, then we can take a far more robust harm minimization review of business practices within the sector. Until we've got that, there is always going to be this balancing act where we can't make regulation so tight that it borders on prohibition.
Yeah.
Without just fueling the black market.
Germany is a great example of that.
I think it's a point you made in there about source of funds. It's quite interesting. I think something that we're seeing in American casinos, this is actually land-based, is that there is a way around doing, there's a type of player that doesn't need KYC doing at all. And it's players that are gambling millions of dollars, because we've seen several cases recently where people have been washing their money clean through very well-known casino properties without a single fucking question being asked.
Look, the same happens with banks, right? Like you get €100 hit your bank account from Malta.
Right?
They'll ring you up and what's going on. You show up with like the copper mine in the fucking wherever, and you just launder it. Anyway, did you see the news story about the Jacksonville Jaguars guy the other week? Yeah.
He's nicked 22 million stolen from his employer, and he's currently suing, was it FanDuel?
FanDuel, getting 200 messages a day from his VIP manager.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they've clearly fucked up in a big way. But the main way they fucked up was in not doing any fucking KYC, in not doing a source of funds. Because if this guy's gambled $22 million and he's just not even a particularly high-level employee that's earning $22 million, do you know what I mean? But in the lawsuit, he's saying it's their fault. He said it's their fault because they should have known that he was an employee of the Jacksonville Jaguars and therefore ineligible to be placing bets. And I have to just point out for 1 second here, he also knew that. That goes back to a question you asked earlier, Finton, that I never got to, and that was about the number of
people who are gaming self-exclusions. My experience is that there's not a huge number of people that set out to do that, but there's a big grey area where an addict actively attempts to get round a self-exclusion and then wants to blame the operator when they lose more. I don't. There certainly is, and I have seen it. There are certainly elements within the player community who are very consciously self-excluding, then looking to free roll. And this has almost become a form of advantage play. It's fraud, but that's the way they're viewing it, and it's being pursued by criminal organizations who are mechanical in what they are doing. But there's also this big overlap with more vulnerable people who, after they realize they've screwed up really badly, are just trying to find a way to get out of the problem. And that's what you're seeing from the sounds of things with this Jacksonville Jaguars employee. They have ruined their lives, and now they need to make it somebody else's responsibility and quickly.
The article I read, and the accusations leveled against FanDuel, it didn't look good for FanDuel. Messages from the VIP manager saying, "Yeah, we've got around this, and we've got around this for you, and you haven't bet today. Where are you?" And the volume of messages and the whole shebang. And the crazy thing is, it's not like you can say, "Oh, this was 10 years ago." The industry has evolved. Like, this is fairly recent. I think well into the RG, we're all responsible companies type stuff. It's quite interesting to see.
I think the US market's an interesting one. I think UEGA has slowed the evolution of attitudes within the US market. It is still a little bit more, even within the regulated sectors, I'm not feeling... I only have a surface level knowledge, so I could be well off. But my feeling is that it's not as tight in responsible gambling terms as some of the European markets. And then you just have to look, I mean, when we talk about the black market and how the regulated market can only do so much until the black market is curtailed. Well, the US market has effectively created a legal black market with the sweepstakes and social casinos. They're not subject to gambling regulation.
That's the second podcast. We'll have to get you back for that one.
Sounds good.
So, Duncan, thank you so much. You're doing great work. The tool is brilliant. Everybody in the industry should be promoting it and donating. So go to betblocker.org. Yeah. And do that. And just keep up the great work. And it's really, really impressive. Thank you so much.